This is the Concealed Carry Podcast, Season 13, Episode 10. And welcome to the Concealed Carry Podcast, part of the concealedcarry.com network, brought to you by HK. Today is Wednesday. I don't know what date it is. March something. 11th.
11th.
March 11th. Wednesday, March 11th,
Yep.
2026. So everyone knows when we recorded this, we are live on YouTube and Facebook, as we typically are with these podcasts. And you're welcome to always join us live, of course. But for those of you that are just listening to us, here we are. We're doing the thing. It's Jacob and Riley. It's been 10 years. In fact, we already did the whole 10-year episode. We are going to talk about some, we're going to do a little follow-up from the 10-year giveaway that we did. So we can do that now, or we can do a quick sponsor message.
One then the other.
Okay. You didn't say which one, though. So, all right, today's episode, it'll become clear. Well, the title of the episode is all about belts for concealed carry. So, surprise, surprise, today's episode is sponsored by EDC Belt Company and the Foundation Belt. Been rocking the Foundation Belt for 5-ish years, I think, at least.
I don't know.
Maybe it'd be even a bit longer.
Yeah, it feels, somewhere there.
5+ years.
Yeah.
I still have like no complaints really personally about the Foundation Belt. And yes, I'm a biased source because we sell them, but
we were using them before we started selling.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
But my point is like we're still rocking these bad boys for a number of years and still very, very happy with them. We're not going to just talk about the Foundation Belt today. We're talking about a lot of different belts and what goes into a good quality concealed carry purpose-built belt. But those of you that are interested in checking out what I think is one of the finest concealed carry belts on the market, you head on over to EDC Belt Co, edcbeltco.com, and you can order your Foundation Belt today. You can also order the Foundation Belt directly on concealedcarry.com, and you can also check out all of the belts we sell on concealedcarry.com. You just go to the concealedcarry.com store and just go to the store and go to shop and select belts, and it'll pull up all the different belts that we have in the store. We'll talk probably about Wilderness Tactical making some quality belts as well. We sell a number of the Wilderness Tactical models. They're excellent too. I've got a couple of them at home. Still use them occasionally, but I do find myself when I go right back to the Foundation Belt for the most part. So there you go.
Done.
Yeah, that's the episode sponsors. So a few weeks ago, we celebrated the 10-year 10-year anniversary of the podcast, along with a huge giveaway. It's one of the bigger giveaways I think we've ever done. I don't know. We've done a few giveaways, but this one was big because we had a couple of stuff. Yeah. We had 4 guns we were giving away.
Yes.
Bunch of different products from companies like Palm, CRKT, Columbia River Knife and Tool, HK.
There was ammo.
Yeah, ammo
there was some
on
bags,
the table. Yep.
Some targets, med kit. Yeah, there was lots of stuff.
We had a bunch of stuff. So the winners have been selected from that 10-year anniversary giveaway.
In some cases, many times over.
Yes. And that's one of the things we want to highlight for you right now. If you signed up for the giveaway, you want to make sure you check your email, okay? And check your spam folder and all that, because we've contacted a few originally selected winners that have never gotten back to us. And we have a policy of giving you a 72-hour window to reply back, or we move on to the next winner. I think that's more than generous.
Yeah, well, and what we don't want to be is the guys who we contacted them all. If they don't respond, I guess they don't get their prizes. Yeah. We want to make sure that we actually, people do win and do receive each of these prizes.
Absolutely.
So we can't wait indefinitely. And 72 hours. That's the deal. Yep. So we've already moved past several people who didn't reply within 72 hours, and we have about half of the prizes right now are pending response.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and it's been actually a couple of weeks. So people are taking their time getting back to us.
Yeah.
That's the point. So
we're not getting back to us at all. Yeah, that's the problem.
Right. So we've got, just to highlight, we had 15 total smaller prize winners. A couple of, we had a HK G36 22 long rifle.
Yeah, sweet gun.
Pretty cool.
Yeah.
Had a couple of the brand spanking new TX9 handguns from Taurus. A Mantis Blackbeard. That's
Very
pretty
cool.
cool.
Very cool.
Right? 2 knives from HK. We had trauma kits from Mountain Medical, Victos bag, knife from CRKT, some glasses from Tactical RX, a KSG Armory holster voucher, EDC belt, foundation belt, like we're going to talk about today, some targets from Throom, and some Palm pepper spray 3-packs. A couple of winners of those.
Yeah.
I'm just giving you the kind of the highlights of the prizes.
Could be an email in your spam folder right now telling you that you won one of those things.
Yep. So, guys, hope that you claim your prizes, those of you that have been selected. We got a lot of you that signed up for the giveaway, and it was really cool to select the winners. It's less cool when you have to move on from the winners to the next winner. I guess it's cool for that person, but
yeah, I suppose.
But hey, we have a grand prize winner. I wanted to highlight this one a little bit. So the grand prize was actually a bundle prize. We had a ticket to the Guardian Conference for 2026, a free quarter. So 3 months worth of Guardian Nation membership was included as part of this. An HK CC9 gun, okay, an Osight SE optic to go on that gun. It fits right on. It's perfect. A CRKT definitive crossbar knife, kind of a cool looking knife. A Palm home and away bundle. It comes with like their usual little Palm, units, as well as the MK3, which is a larger unit, including also a home defense unit, which is like,
it looks like
riot control level
serious
stuff.
Huge old canister. It's like you're running around with like a fire extinguisher, but it's pepper spray.
Right. And then there was also 250 rounds from Mags & Co. 9mm ammo. So it was a pretty awesome prize, and the winner did claim that prize.
Yep,
so that was pretty cool.
One's locked in.
Yeah, we mentioning who that is?
Yeah, I think they're from Texas, and we can give a first name.
Yeah.
I think it's cool. It's not a super common name. I forget. It starts with a W.
Let's see here. Wayland is his name.
Wayland. There you go. Wayland from Texas.
Congrats to Wayland in Texas for the grand prize winner. That was awesome to see you get a pretty awesome bundle of prizes there. I don't know what that would total be valued at, but a lot.
It's muy bueno.
A couple of $1,000s worth of gear. So it was fun to celebrate our 10-year anniversary in this fashion. So thanks again, everyone, for your support of the podcast for all these years. And we'll see where we are in 10 years. Don't know if we'll have another opportunity to do that just seems unfathomable, but
20. Will there even be podcasts in 10 years?
Yeah, right.
Maybe we will have moved on.
Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, guys, again, check your email in case you've been selected, and we'll look forward to getting more of those winners announced or contacted. So we're not announcing everybody here, but there you go. Well, let's get back to the podcast topic today, all about belts for concealed carry, Jacob.
Yep. I suspect that every single concealed carrier listening to this or watching this is guilty of having used a non designed for the purpose gun belt to conceal a gun. I have.
Oh, sure.
Right. I just think it's one of those places where you're sort of like, well, I got to buy all this stuff that the guy told me to in the class. I got to get a new gun, all this stuff. And he talked about belts, but I have a belt. Like, at least I should try the belt I have, right? So I think that's just where most of us start, is with no gun belt at all, let alone maybe an optimal belt. But no belt. No, I shouldn't say no belt. I should say not a gun belt.
Yeah, well, I mean,
a standard kind of traditional. It holds up to pants.
If you're new to concealed carry, I would say there's a high probability you never even considered that what you use for a belt, assuming you're carrying on the waist, which we generally advocate for as being the best practice. It's not going to be everybody's solution, but most people are probably carrying on or near the waist. And if you're doing so, you might not have considered that. Yeah, there's a difference in using just a normal belt and using a belt that's purpose-built, purpose-designed for supporting concealed carry on the waistband. And that's really what we want to share with you here today, because we know there's going to be some of you out there that never even thought about it, or if maybe you've thought about it, but you just don't know what really matters and what makes
Sure.
a difference.
Sure.
So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about what goes into, these optimized for concealed carry belts.
I think we also need to clarify what they are not, and that they are not like a duty belt. We're not talking about a duty
Mhm.
belt or a battle belt for those of you who your brain might go there. But some of you have an experience, maybe with law enforcement or in private security or with military, whatever it might be. And when you think of like a gun belt, you think of something that's a little bit more substantial than what we're talking about. A big duty belt, is going to have it's going to be pretty significant because it has to support a lot of gear from, I don't know, I'm not a cop, cuffs, radio, I don't know, bunch
Mhm.
of mags and taser and I don't know, whatever other stuff they put on their belts.
Yep.
So that's not what we're talking about when we talk about a concealed carry belt, or if I use the word gun belt, I'm really thinking of something more EDC concealed carry focused.
Right. Right. Likewise, there's certainly a place for kind of a duty belt style, or like a range setup, perhaps, that you only put on when you're going to the range and you're doing outside waistband work or
Hmm.
something.
Hmm.
Our intent is not to talk about that so much today, because this is, after all, the concealed carry podcast.
Yeah, but you need to know what you might run into if you just Google gun belt.
Right.
Another variation of belts that could be in that category would be like a competition rig. I don't
Yep.
know. I don't even own one of those, but you have a few.
Yep.
So a competition rig, it's designed for some sort of competitive shooting sport that holds all sorts of stuff on it too. Primarily a whole bunch of mags.
Yep. Yeah, and even if we were to look at those are, again, they're purpose built, purpose designed for that specific use. I mean, a competition belt by nature is, um, specific to that sport,
Yes.
really,
Right.
is kind of what we see. Because like what I use in USPSA isn't even what I would use if I was competing in IDPA, for instance. Of course, IDPA is typically done from concealment, at the very least having like a concealment vest over top of things, and the in fact, by rules, you can't even use the you know the belt that goes over our top, like the competition belt that we use in USPSA. Actually, by rules, your belt has to go through your belt loops in IDPA. So anyway, not really the intent of this podcast, but just since you mentioned it.
Yeah. The point is,
Yep.
gun belt could refer to a lot of things.
Yep.
And I think we're trying to talk in today's episode about this like sub niche of that, which is
Yeah.
a concealed carry belt or an EDC
Right.
belt, if you prefer.
So if you're like me or like you, I suspect, in the beginning, I mean, I remember I carried for a few years, with just kind of a normal leather belt. It
Yes.
wasn't, I wouldn't say it was a weak leather belt, but it was
It's traditional.
just a normal
Yeah.
leather belt.
Walmart style, I bet you today they're probably like $15 on Amazon or something.
Sure.
It's
I
just,
mean,
yeah, it's black and it's got a buckle and holes every inch or something. And
yeah. I mean, it was, I think
it's probably 1 inch wide.
the one I used for quite a while was just a 2-layer stitched leather belt. It was a decent belt. It was not just your, cheap off the shelf Walmart, but it wasn't like a high end one either. I think I paid like $40 for it
Oh,
or
I was
something,
the cheaper the better for me. That's where I was. Absolutely.
But I had that belt for quite a few years. It served me well. In fact, I think I still have it somewhere. It hasn't been on my waist in quite some time. But so that's what I used for a number of years, and so it's non-reinforced. I wouldn't have called it flimsy at the time, but I would now, knowing what I know, and using different gear now. I'd be like, that thing was flimsy, but I thought it was like a pretty stout belt at the time.
Sure. Sure.
So at the time, I thought that was the right thing. That was the right play. That was just a decent quality, relatively thick, but not overly so, leather belt.
Sure.
And at that time, I also carried on my hip, or, slightly behind the hip, like 4 o'clock,
Yeah,
3, 3:30,
4:30.
4,
Yeah.
something like that. And it worked okay, you know?
I mean, I didn't know what I didn't know, right? And I think that's the point of the kind of where we're starting off this episode is if you've never used anything other than a pretty standard traditional belt, then as far as it just does what it does.
Yeah.
And you don't know what you're missing out on.
Yeah. So one thing I noticed after a few years of wearing that belt, is that it started to sag kind of in, the location where my gun was carried all the time. Um, and, I didn't think I just thought that was natural and normal and like to be expected. And so I didn't think anything of it. I didn't think or realize that the the belt was not helping me carry my gear and support the gear more effectively than some of the other options out there. So I think the first time I encountered a reinforced belt of some kind was, oh man, early 2010s. I don't know, 2010,
Yeah. Yeah.
2011, 2012. I don't remember, but I remember the first belt I bought, and I think I bought it from, it was some gun store, and it was a reinforced belt. And I don't know whether it was steel or if it, some are using like a some kind of polymer plastic ribbing inside there. I don't know what it just said. It was reinforced. I'm like, all right, cool, it's reinforced, but it was definitely noticeably stiffer than what I had been previously
Sure.
using. And the first thing I noted from the moment of putting that on was, oh, like now the belt doesn't flex
Sure.
as much with the weight of the gun. And it was notable at the time to me. And so all of a sudden I'm like, oh, this is the way to go. And so then I started using uh, a number of different brands over the years of just straight up reinforced belts.
Yeah.
So, I mean, what was your experience?
I remember my first belt was a wilderness instructor belt, like my first, gunish belt.
Mhm.
And it appealed to me, and this is going to sound so silly, but it appealed to me because I saw an ad or someone, whoever, whatever the source was that I learned about it, it said that you could rappel with this thing, or like a helicopter could come and pick
Sure.
you up,
Yeah.
and you could hook in on your belt. And I was like, that sounds awesome. That just sounds like I will never need that, and it sounds so cool. So I was in. I was just like, yeah, I want that. Like I want the thing that a helicopter could come and pick me up with. So yeah, I got the wilderness instructor belt, and I love that. I wore that belt. I still have that belt. I still have. I think all of my gun belts I've ever owned. They have their own little section in the closet. But yeah, I wore that belt for years, and yes, it made a huge difference. Immediately, you can notice because that's the first thing that the primary objective of the belt, and when we're talking about this EDC concealed carry application, is that it's supposed to spread out the weight of the gun around the waist so that you don't have I mean, if all the weight is centered in one spot, then you really have potential health issues. It's not good for you for your body to be supporting all the weight in one place. So the belt is distributing the weight of the gun around the body, and it needs a certain amount of rigidity in order to do that. And so yes, going from almost no rigidity to suddenly like serious rigidity, that was notable because when all you're doing is holding up your pants, it really doesn't matter. You can take some string or a rope and tie up, your pants through the
Right.
belt loops. It'll keep your pants from falling down.
Mhm.
But when you put the gun on there, all of a sudden that holster on there, now you have an issue where you have that weight, a couple pounds, and so yes, a belt is distributing that, and it made an immediate difference.
Yeah. So, yeah, likewise, all that what you said, I noticed that right away is that all of a sudden that reinforced belt was supporting the load of the gun much better, and and it felt better, and so that became kind of my new norm for a few years. So I think that's probably the first place I wanted to start with is just pointing out first of all to carry a gun concealed on your waist. Ideally, it's that you want to have a belt that has reinforcement of some kind. Ideally, reinforced mostly in this kind of up and down, plane, supporting so the belt's not sagging so much downward towards the ground because gravity is going to do its thing, right? You
Yeah,
got a gun on your waist,
yeah,
and so obviously gravity is going to want to pull that down. And so, I mean, the belt can still be flexible, kind of the side to side plane, if you will, but you want in the vertical plane along the face of that belt to be ideally fairly stiff to support that gun weight. So,
yeah, and I think that this is one of those things that we've talked about before, where you kind of end up sometimes in extremes
yep,
and without balance.
yep,
And that's probably the first, like first big aha for me after the obvious one of just like no gun belt to gun belt. That was like, oh geez, this is way more comfortable. It's distributing the weight. But then the first big aha came when I realized that more stiff is not equal more better.
Well, more stiff you could argue is better for supporting the gun.
Oh, sure.
But there's a downside, I think, is what you're trying to
Right,
point out.
right.
That you
There
start
comes with a
getting
cost.
yeah. So I remember there was a belt in particular that I had at one point that I was like, man, this is the jam, because it was a really stiff belt, which meant that it supported the gun really well. But I'd only make it 3/4 of the way through the day before I'm like, oh man, it's just uncomfortable.
Dig it on the side a
So
little bit. Yeah.
what you're saying is we can go really stiff with a belt, but then it's going to start impacting our comfort. And I remember the first time we had a conversation about this with Brian Eastridge a few years ago. He's actually the creator of the foundation belt, and he was just talking about how our torsos are shaped, our waists are shaped. And I don't remember the exact terminology he used at the time, but I remember in my mind the way I made sense of it is, that our bodies are oval or, in some cross sections, almost like a jelly bean in shape. If we were to do a cross section right through your belly or through your midsection there, look at your waist. I mean, you're kind of either an oval or almost like a jelly bean. And when you take a belt, and particularly a belt that is stiffly reinforced, and especially when it's reinforced in a uniform fashion, okay, in other words, from north to east to south to west and back to north again, right? Then what that really means is that reinforced belt wants to be a circle, right? And I remember this is a conversation I had with Brian, and he's just like, hey, a standard belt, it's just like it's a circle, and you're trying to fit a jelly bean or an oval into a circle. And like, yeah, you can do that. And over time, the belt will settle in and break in a little bit too, but you still kind of end up with these like almost pinchy points. And for me, it's like right sort of in the back corners of my hips.
Just almost right
like
behind the center, the side hips. Yeah.
Yeah. I'd feel like this extra pressure back there and stuff. And so that's when I realized, okay, that stiff belt was great to a point, but you can go so stiff, especially that now, and especially where it's uniformly stiff like that now it's going to start kind of compressing in on those corners a little bit more.
And you see advertising for concealed carry belts where the one that sticks out in my mind that I'll just never forget is these guys where the ad basically said it's so stiff you can stand on it.
Yes.
Right. Like you could stand on our belt and it will not sag or bend or fold. Like
they made a big deal of that to the point that people were taking pictures of themselves standing on their belts.
Yeah, it probably was great viral marketing, right? Like, check out my new belt. This is me standing on it. But there's that huge aha moment for me where I was like, man, like if you wear a hula hoop, it's going to be a problem.
Yes.
And that's how I thought
about hula hoops again here in a minute.
Yeah, we're going to come back to it. But so there's this balance of stiffness where we need the belt to be stiff enough to support the gun, to distribute the weight of the gun, and to prevent sagging of the gun wherever it is on the waistline. But if the stiffer that belt gets, we start to jeopardize comfort. And there's some other practical application things beyond just comfort too. Like if the belt does not conform to the body's shape, then as you move, you cause other problems beyond comfort. Comfort continues to be an issue as you move, let alone when you stand still or sit still.
Yep.
But we also effectively start to print the belt.
Yeah, so that's kind of when I mentioned I was going to talk about hula hoops. I have experienced this. I have felt this. So you can get to a point that your belt is so stiff on your waist, and it becomes especially noticeable if you carry forward of the hips. So like appendix style carry, you'll feel this a bit more because of just where that gun is sitting. But in other words, like where the belt is tightest on you is going to be at kind of where your hips are, right?
Right.
And where it has a little bit less pressure is in the front and in the back. And so when you have a really stiff belt, it can be like a hula hoop, and you stick your waist inside that, and you can have belts that are so stiff that like it almost feels like there's a hula hoop on your waist to the
Hmm.
point where it's almost moving independent of your body.
Yeah.
And like that can cause some printing issues. And also it just feels strange actually, because I like my gun to feel like close to my body, and that it's moving with me,
Right.
and not
Right.
independent of me. And so I had that belt I was referencing a minute ago that was really stiff. Like there would be times where, like I would twist and I'd feel like my torso moving separate from like everything else. And that was just like a really strange feeling. So I did want to talk about concealment a little bit, um, because I think this is an important distinction to also make in this discussion, that when you go to a stiff reinforced belt, particularly a more traditional one, like they've made these for a number of years now. It works pretty well, I think, if you're carrying on the hip. You know, you might have some comfort issues, and we're going to talk about the alternative to having a uniformly stiff belt.
Sure.
But but I think that system works pretty well if you're carrying on or behind the hip, having that style of stiff reinforced belt. Uh, when One thing I remember noticing with a stiff belt is that it actually made my wing or claw on my holster more effective. And that's something, we can go down that rabbit hole a little bit here, but for those that aren't familiar, the claw or wing on your holster, this is a more recent development in holster technology. It's become really a thing in the last decade or so. They've been around for a while, but for a long time, holsters didn't use this technology, right? But once we started adding that claw or wing to the holster, it helps tuck the grip. It basically helps orient the grip in towards the body, and that's dependent upon the belt
Yes.
actually applying pressure to that wing.
Yes.
And so if you're using, sometimes I've seen questions come up online in various forums or whatever. People are talking about concealment issues, and they're using, a fairly modern holster. It's got a wing on it, and they're like, I'm still struggling to get this grip to tuck in. And it's like, well, what are you using for a belt?
Hmm.
And a lot of times it's pretty common to find out they're just using a standard belt, and that's going to be part of the explanation of why that
Sure.
wing is not,
Just not getting
applying the
any
leverage that it's
torque.
supposed to. And so I noticed when I first started using a really stiff belt is like, oh wow, now this thing is really concealing well, but to a point. When the belt is so stiff, like it can only suck into the body so tight. And you said like you can almost like see the belt start to print. And I've experienced that. So
Yeah, it's well, speaking of printing too, remember the buckle. So, I mentioned my wilderness instructor belt, and I loved my wilderness instructor belt. I think they're just great.
Mhm.
But that's one that has a very specific application, and EDC carry with the T-shirt is probably not the intended application of that particular belt. And it, like a lot of other, concealed carry belts, has a very large buckle. And that
Yeah.
buckle, it I mean, I remember I've had experiences where friends who know I carry a gun saw the buckle through the shirt and thought it was my gun.
Mhm.
Right? We're like, "Hey, you're printing," and I'm like, "That's not my gun. That's my bolt. That's my belt buckle." you know, and it's like, talk about a problem. Like, good job, concealing your gun,
Yeah.
but your belt buckle is still freaking huge.
Yeah.
People think it's a gun coming through your shirt. Another common one we see a lot of these companies who make belts with what I'll call the Cobra buckle.
Yeah.
And it's a generic enough thing now that everybody can, go source some Cobra buckles and put them on their belts. But it's a relatively bulky buckle. It just it just prints. I mean, maybe not, depending on what you're wearing or if you're wearing loose enough clothing and things.
Sure.
So some of you might say, "Oh, it's not an issue for me. I don't have that problem." So clothing can solve all concealment related issues.
Yep.
But certainly, if your belt buckle is printing through your shirt more than your gun,
Mhm.
I'd
Yeah.
say I'd say that's a
That's a
problem.
problem for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Yeah, I had one with the Cobra buckle, which I think the buckle's awesome.
Oh, great.
It's
Very efficient.
it's easy to click in and click out,
Yeah.
undo and all that. Pretty cool little setup. But that that was a belt that was just too stiff.
Yeah.
It caused some comfort issues for sure. Like it'd be interesting to go back to one of those now, and I'm sure I'd very quickly dislike it because I'd be like, oh wow, compared to what I'm using right now, it's just not even it's night and day difference in terms of comfort. So let's talk kind of shift a little bit. Unless I mean, you're welcome to obviously.
I was going to talk about some good buckles. 'Cause we
Okay,
mentioned
yeah, that
so
since we're on the topic of buckles, yeah.
yeah, buckles. So one I like that I recently have been using here and there. Here it is. I found it. The Wilderness Tactical Swift Belt.
Mm.
Have you seen this buckle? I'm just showing you a picture.
Yep,
Yeah.
yep, just yeah.
So it's an interesting kind of setup because it's one of these where you kind of have a fixed width of the belt. You kind of set how big you want this belt to be, and then it's kind of a quick on and off detach, which
Mhm,
is similar to a Cobra buckle, for example.
mhm.
But it's super low profile. I mean, the Wilderness Tactical Swift belt has a very low profile buckle. It's just not taking a lot of space, but it's highly efficient. Of course, we've talked about the foundation belt from EDC Belt Co., which I have on right now. I assume you probably do too.
Oh yeah,
But
absolutely.
I don't know if if they made up the name for this buckle or if it's like an industry standard thing, but they call it the Tri-Glide.
Oh, that's just that's yeah,
That's a thing.
that's a
Okay,
tri-glide
so
buckle is what that
The
is. Mhm.
Tri-Glide buckle, and
Yep.
it's made out of brass. It's extremely low profile. I mean, I can't imagine you coming up with a belt buckle that takes up less space under the shirt and on the belt than this.
Mhm.
It's tiny. So I really appreciate those kinds of buckles that in the case of an EDC can still carry belt, they're taking up very little room, very little space.
Yeah. I've got some other belts that are very similar with that Swift belt buckle style.
Hmm.
They're a little bit different, they look a little different, but they function the same way.
Sure.
Where just is basically like a hook,
Yeah. Yeah.
that you're putting through a loop or something on the belt, um, or the belt itself, and those are pretty effective. I haven't had any issues with those at all. Honestly, if the foundation belt was set up like that, it wouldn't really bother me one way or another. As far as that buckle is concerned, they're both, like you mentioned, the Tri-Glide, like is used on the foundation belt, or that Swift belt style is, you know, all the same to me as far as good low profile, easy to use. One thing if you travel a lot, if you fly a lot, I mean, I haven't been
Hmm.
flying as much the last year or two, but uh, it's actually it's I'll tell you this, you will not set off metal detectors using something like the foundation belt
No.
because the buckle itself is not steel or contain any iron. As you mentioned, it's brass. It's been nickel plated. It's nickel plated brass, but there's nothing about this belt that will set off metal detectors.
Which is super
Um,
convenient.
and they tell you you're supposed to take your belt off when you go to the airport. Pretty often, I don't take mine off. Now, some of their scanners now, of course, will still pick it up. They're like, "Oh, there's something there," and like I'll just lift up my shirt and they look at it. They're like, "Okay, you're good. Carry on."
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
just go right through with my belt
I
on most of the
appreciate
time.
not having and there's other situations, I went to a hospital recently, I had to go through a metal detector.
Yep.
So I go to a sheriff's office on occasion here or there for any number of reasons and have to go through a metal detector. So yeah, like
Yeah.
don't have to take my belt off. And sometimes they'll ask like, "Oh, what about your belt?" I'm like, "There's no metal.
Yeah.
I'm good." So
Yeah.
yes, I appreciate that it's not a metal that I have to worry about in that respect.
Yeah.
Yeah, highly convenient.
By the way, I do want to recognize we've got a lot of great, we've got a lot of comments coming in on Facebook, especially a little bit on YouTube. Appreciate those of you that are commenting. Um, there's not all comments or questions we're going to be able to address, just so you know. Some of these will probably take us off topic. But real quick, I think we should just handle Brian's question real quick, Jacob. Is it better to carry in a holster on a belt, since we are talking about, on the belt carry, or just carry in a front pocket? And so I just thought I'd get your quick take on that.
It's the good old usual depends, right?
Yeah.
I think if we take into context all the various things that an average person does on an average day,
Mhm.
then probably we tend to find that IWB on a belt is the most efficient way to conceal a gun that's easy to access for deployment in a self-defense context. But there's exceptions, right? So I think that's what you find most people do, because it seems to be the most universally applicable effective option.
Yeah.
But it doesn't make it the most effective option for every person or in every context or with every gun.
Yeah. I agree. It depends. Some quick feedback to that question from me would be, I have found in my study for a number of years now, the concealed carry lifestyle, that the best well-rounded approach to carrying a gun for typical daily use is on the belt. And the way to evaluate this, Brian, is to consider the pros and cons. And I think that pocket carry has more cons than just carrying on the belt. The biggest con of carrying on the belt is that there's maybe a higher probability of like printing issues or concealment type issues. You just have to balance that a little bit more as far as the holster you're using, the gun you're carrying, and of course the belt's
Sure.
part of this, and whether that's going to effectively carry it in a concealed fashion that's also comfortable. The pocket, though, just has a couple of major drawbacks. Number one being it's just slower to access, unless you can start with your hand on the gun in the pocket.
Sure.
That's the only way that's faster. Otherwise, it is all around less fast. And there's going to be situations where you need a gun potentially that you can't start with your hand in the gun or in the pocket.
I think the probability is higher that you have you need an immediate response, not a surreptitious draw.
Right.
So it's less likely to be an advantage than it is to be a disadvantage.
Another major disadvantage of pocket carry is you're almost certainly limited to pretty small guns.
Yeah, low capacity,
Right.
small, difficult.
Low capacity, harder to shoot. Exactly. And
Yep.
so that's the big stuff there that I would consider, Brian.
Last thought on Brian's comment is the way that his question is worded suggests that he may be thinking holster on belt is an option or no holster and in a pocket is the other. So it's just worth noting that even if carrying in a front pocket, you should still have a pocket holster involved.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah,
always.
Yeah.
In fact, the next comment, I think there might have been a reply to this, was from Alberto, and he said always holster.
Yeah.
So that's probably his opinion on that.
If that wasn't clear. Yep.
Also, Jeffrey comments saying, I'm guessing this is what he carries, HKVP9SK in an Omni ISWB on a 1791 belt does a trick.
If it works for you, brother. Yeah.
Hey, it's a great choice of gun, that's for sure.
Yep. No problem.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously you should be carrying a KSG Lexington instead of that Omni ISWB, but to each their own. Whatever is all good.
That's right.
1791 is a leather business, and so companies that make holsters tend to be in the belt business, especially if you make leather holsters. Because if you make leather holsters, it's not a far stretch for you to start making belts.
Yeah.
The same materials are already in house. Like we need a couple of pieces of hardware, we need a couple patterns, cut it different, sew it different.
Yeah.
So you tend to find the holster companies are the biggest sellers of concealed carry belts. In fact, our company is an exception in that way, in that KSG Armory does not make or sell any belts, which is our holster business, and we support or primarily promote the EDC Belt Co. Foundation belt, which they don't make any holsters. So anyway, I just put that out there that you tend to find the holster companies make belts and belt companies make holsters, and they tend to go hand in hand because it is a system.
Yep.
And it tends to work together.
For sure. I think this is a good point to transition a little bit. I actually wanted to address maybe what are some of the different pros and cons of different styles of belts.
Yeah.
And so you mentioned specifically, like there's leather belts out there, obviously. Most leather belts, they're not all, but most leather belts typically, and again, there are some exceptions. And of course, I'm thinking of like, we'll come to that next belt, or click style belts, but most leather belts in the traditional sense are a buckle with holes, right? About every inch or whatever. Okay. And so that's a very traditional belt design, been probably used for hundreds of years. And the problem with that is that you're limited to every inch adjustments.
Yeah. So adjustability is the point here, right? And I think you're spot on. This is going to sound a little bit bizarre to the unindoctrinated, right? To those of you who are new, who have never used a gun or concealed carry belt, but having the ability to adjust it by quarter inch, half inch, is actually pretty substantial as far as
Yep.
like it's a big deal. I find myself adjusting my belt quite a bit, and so having the adjustability to I call it infinite adjustability.
Mhm.
So infinite adjustability is a really nice feature to be able to say a little tighter, a little looser, and a lot of that's context for me. It's like I'm home now. I careth not if I print. So I'm happy to loosen my belt a little bit, get a little bit more, increase comfort, decrease concealability because I'm at my house. That kind of thing. So it takes very little adjustment sometimes to make a difference. It's like, oh, you know what? I like the shirt I'm wearing today. Turns out it's a little tight on me, and my gun's printing a little bit. I think I'll just tighten down this belt just a little bit.
Mhm.
Kink, kink, cool. I'm good now. That grip is now tucked a little bit tighter. Put a little more pressure on that wing, whatever it is, and now I'm golden. So yeah, this idea of infinite adjustability matters a lot. And there's generally two ways infinite adjustability is provided by a belt. The first is Velcro, and the second is a click style belt. We have to be careful with saying click style belt because there's also a brand of click belts. But anyway,
Mhm.
so the click belts are what they sound like. These little like ridge style plastic middle piece in the belt, and as it's going through the
It's
buckle,
a
it kind of
ratcheting belt system.
ratcheting. That's the word I was looking
Yep.
for. Very well said.
Yep.
And so our grand prize winner just tried calling me back.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
How about that?
Sorry, Wayland in Texas. I'll call you back. So it's the ratcheting style kind of thing, and those are like 1/4 inch adjustments. Sometimes they're even tighter. Most of them are 1/4 inch adjustments, and there's a lot of brands now that make and sell those in lots of different materials. You can get that in nylon belt or leather belt, whatever. And
Mhm.
then Velcro, as I mentioned, the Velcro a little bit different, obviously, but it's a similar kind of thing. You're just kind of putting the belt material through something and then tightening it as much as you want and securing it with Velcro.
Mhm.
Both of them noteworthy to say make noise.
Mhm.
So I don't know of any like real silent adjustability belt options. If you got the click thing, then you go click, 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 as you tighten it up, or if you loosen it, maybe they don't. I don't. Yeah, I guess you don't make any sound if you loosen it. And on the Velcro, same thing. It's like, to pull the Velcro apart, and then tighten it, loosen it, and put it back.
Yeah. Some people have made the comment about, noise being a problem, like especially with like Velcro belts. And I have never found myself in a situation where I felt like I was giving something away
It doesn't bother
by
me at
like,
all. Like,
like see if you can hear this, right? Like that's about the extent. Here,
it's not a big deal.
I'll get closer to the mic even, like, I mean,
This looks kind of funny to watch.
right? Like, I guess I could have done it using this one, but okay, there you go. There's the
That
sound,
was
right?
close to the mic. Yeah.
Um, I I think Velcro or hook and loop is universally used enough in today's world that I've never worried about that at all.
It doesn't. Yeah, I
I'm
can't
in the
imagine.
restroom or something in a
Yeah.
stall, and I'm like
Ah,
somebody's gonna freak out because they hear Velcro, and I don't think so.
Yeah,
So
you're probably not adjusting your belt in a place where sound is an issue to begin with
right,
for the other reasons.
yeah,
So, yeah, to me, it's a non-issue, but I think it's worth saying out loud
yeah.
that the price of infinite adjustability is some noise when you make an adjustment.
Yeah, so the ratcheting style belts have become quite popular
Yes.
over the last few years, and I've used some of those, and I don't dislike them. You can get some really cool designs. They usually have a buckle to them that can be, can have any number of designs to that buckle. They can be quite fashionable. I don't usually worry about that so much because I'm not normally exposing it because it's part of my concealed carry setup, right? So I don't really care so much what the belt looks like necessarily, but there's some cool belts out there and some cool brands making them. I have seen some that marketed themselves as being gun belts or concealed carry focused, and then when I got my hands on them, was a little bit unimpressed with the lack of reinforcement to them as far as like how rigid they were supporting the gun, in terms fighting against gravity. Then I've seen some others that have become quite popular, and I'm not going to mention specific brands that are actually really stiff, surprisingly so, like more so than what I would want to have. And they have all the same problems like what we talked about earlier, that they're uniformly stiff throughout the belt. And so you're taking something that wants to be a uniform circle and you're trying to conform an oval
Yeah,
inside of that.
no, it's not functional.
So
What I tend to see, well, and it's worth noting too that you might need more than one belt based on different
Yep.
things you wear. I have 2 concealed carry belts I regularly use. One is kind of the Monday through Saturday belt, and the other one's the Sunday belt. So on Sunday, I'm dressed nicer. I don't want to use a nylon coyote tan
Mhm.
belt with my suit that I wear to church. So there I'm putting on a leather belt,
Yep.
you know.
Yep.
So I think you have to have different styles for different things too. I mean, EDC Belt Co. doesn't make a leather belt, so I'm using a different belt,
Yep.
a competing belt in that case, and that's okay. But with leather, okay, I guess what I want to talk about construction here,
Mm.
because there's a couple different ways to create, the reinforced thing to make the belt be reinforced. One way is just thicker, like more layers of material.
Yep.
More layers of material. In the case of leather, we generally see 2 or 3 layers. 3 layers starts to get really freaking thick, and so that becomes a thing. In the case of nylon, we generally see 2 or 3 layers of the nylon webbing kind of material. So that's one way, is we can just add more layers of material. The other way is some sort of like material in the middle. We put material in it. And you talked about this a little bit at the beginning of the episode,
Mhm.
when you talk like a steel core or some sort of like polymer plastic type core. We see scuba webbing
Mhm.
used, so there's some sort of material that's in the middle of the material. That is a solid-ish material.
Yeah.
So those are things to look for, like when you're looking at a belt and it's describing how it's made, how it's manufactured, and what's included. Now you can look for that. And if you see something that's like triple layer leather with steel core, it's like, okay, like that's going to be one of those things that you could repel off of for sure.
Yeah.
But it's never going to conform to the shape of the body. Which, by the way, I noticed earlier when you talked about chopping someone in half and saying that their body would be shaped like a bean, you talked about me. Is that because I'm getting a little bit, big? Is
No,
that
I'm a jelly bean.
okay? Just making sure, I
Yeah.
wasn't getting made fun of. Got my
I
got
mean,
my
and what I
little
mean by that,
self
by the
here.
way, is that typically, and this is true of many humans. I mean, there's going to be different degrees
Sure,
of
sure, sure.
size, obviously, but like generally, we're round across the front, we're rounder around the hips, and across the back is more flat.
Flat slash even concaved a little. Yeah,
Yeah, and that's
yeah.
what I'm talking about, like jelly bean
Yes.
shape.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, well said. So I think those are all, like, we got to think about the construction and how we're achieving it along these same lines. If I can transition us a little bit, you got to think about belt width.
Hmm.
So
Yep.
traditional belts that I was buying before I was concerned about having a concealed carry belt or a gun belt, all the belts I owned were 1 inch wide.
Yep.
And traditionally, like, you can't buy a pair of pants that aren't going to accept a 1 inch belt, whether it's jeans or my suit pants or some slacks or whatever it is. Like, those are all going to be fine with a 1 inch belt.
Yep.
But we tend to find it's more difficult to achieve the objective on a concealed carry belt or a gun belt with only 1 inch to work with.
Yes.
Like, it's
That's
hard
a good
to
point.
build it in a way that's going to be stiff enough to get the job done. So you tend to find that most concealed carry belts are 1.5 inches. That's a very kind of standardized size. Yeah, I certainly, you can go buy them that are 1 3/4 or even 2 inches, but you start to then have issues with traditional clothing.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. I think where today's market has settled is that most gun focused belts, especially concealed carry belts, are 1.5 inch belt.
Yes,
Which that is good to point out because I have seen some pants that have belt loops that are like 1.5 inches is
pushing
like
it.
max,
Well, and
you
it's
know?
sort of like margin of error kind of problem.
Yep.
Like
Yep.
like if like my I have pants for sure where if you measured the belt buckles, you'd be like, well, the company who made these pants said it's a 1.5 inch, but it's really not.
Yeah.
It's just shy of that. Or, I bought this belt and the belt company said that it was a 1.5 inch belt, but it's really not. It's
Yep.
more like 1.55
Yeah.
inches, right? So there's this like tolerance of manufacturing both in pants and in belts where you might think you got it because you got a 1.5 inch belt loop and a 1.5 inch belt, and you go to put that together, it doesn't work out. Sometimes it's about thickness. It's like, no, like
Yep.
it should work. It's 1.5 inch buckle or loop and a 1.5 inch belt, but because the belt is so thick, it flexes the buckle in a way that it won't fit.
Yep.
So anyway, that's worth understanding and considering, that your average pair of jeans probably have tolerances to the degree it's not a problem, but certainly in dress clothing, I tend to find that my margin of error is much tighter.
Yeah. Yep, all good points to point out there and to be aware of as you're, shopping for things, shopping for clothes, pants, belts, all that. Uh, let's talk now. We've alluded to it. It's a sponsor of today's episode, but let's talk about kind of a more recent innovation in the belt market. And it's not the only belt company doing this now. There's only a couple of them, but
Well, I think it was the first to do
I
it.
think it is the first for sure. So we talked about some of the downsides of having a uniformly stiffened belt. Uh, so a few years ago, 6, 7, I don't know how many years now, Brian Eastridge, the creator of the foundation belt, he got to thinking, and I think he did a good job thinking with all of this, and he created the foundation belt, which is not uniformly stiff throughout
Yeah.
the belt structure. And so let me just describe this belt to you really quick. It is made primarily from nylon, a nylon webbing material. That is the outside and inside portions of the belt. It's got a portion of it that is a nylon inner layer as well. So it is actually technically 3 layers, but they're compact layers. But there is certain portions of this belt that has, you referenced it earlier, scuba webbing as a stiffener
Hmm.
in there. Okay, and that portion is just a little bit thicker. It's really almost like you probably can't even see it on the camera. Those of you that are watching live,
Yeah.
you
If you're
can't
holding it in your
tell.
hand, you can definitely tell.
Yeah, you can tell where the stiffer parts are. But basically, the idea behind this is that it's more geared towards those that are carrying like forward to the hip. Although I think it works pretty well with on the hip carry as well. I've certainly done
Yeah,
that.
3 to 4 o'clock even, but
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
But the idea here is that the back portion of the belt,
yeah.
so where it
Across the
goes
small of your
across
back.
your back, is not reinforced like at
Hmm.
all. It's just nylon material. And you can see like this portion here is super flexible. Whereas up here, I mean, I can bend it, but I can't, I can do whatever I want to the
It's not the
back
same.
portion,
Yeah.
right? So this is basically the front half of the belt is reinforced
I would
and
call it more like
it's like two
it's more like
thirds.
2/3 of the belt's reinforced, whereas that 1/3 that's across the small of the back is not.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So the idea here then is that we're taking that jelly bean shape
Hmm.
and making a belt that more easily conforms to that,
Yes.
which
Yes.
increases comfort dramatically.
And it's worth noting that we keep every time in this episode we've referred to comfort. You need to understand that that's also it's also about health. Like if we drug a doctor in here, a chiropractor, or people who really understand the body, they would I think support the idea that like when your belt doesn't feel comfortable, it's also not good for your body. You need to support like a good structure. When we talk about your spine and your back and your tailbone and weight distribution, like it's yes, like comfort be good, but also comfort in this context is also adding to like a healthy structure.
Yeah. I mean, some people already have hip issues, back issues, sciatic pain, and which are things that I've even dealt with at times. In fact, it's been years, but just like a month or two ago, I had a little bit of sciatica kind of flare up.
Mhm.
And I'll tell you, that would not have been, I remember I used to have major issues with that back when I was doing construction work
Sure,
and I was
sure.
wearing a tool belt like on a daily basis, which was a belt, but also had suspenders too to take some of that load off the hips. But even with that, like I remember having a lot of, uh, my dad struggles with it. I struggle with it, sciatic pain. And I could tell you that normal belts back in the day, especially if they were reinforced at all, made that just almost excruciating at times.
Well, I
So
remember like it hit me the hardest when I was at S12 with Mickey Shook and Paul Sharp, who's a member of the Shivworth Collective, and he was teaching at S12 that year. He drove out and he showed up. He had driven all the way from Boise, Idaho, ish area, all the way to basically Nashville, Tennessee. It was a long freaking drive,
yeah,
and he was recovering from something. Paul, if you're watching this, I'm sorry, I don't remember the details, but I think Paul was recovering from maybe a surgery or something was going on, and so he had been kind of stripping gear off the belt because he was in pain and he was trying to recover. And finally he got a foundation belt, put it on, put all the gear back on, and then drove seated in a car across a good about half the country. and showed up in Tennessee and was like, man, my back feels better than it has in weeks.
Yeah.
He was pumped. Like, he came right to me. He's like, dude, we got to talk about this belt.
Yeah.
So it is about not just comfort, but health. Like, and having reinforcement where the gun is, so we can distribute the weight around the entire body, but having flexibility where your body actually moves and where your body is flat, that creates not just comfort, but health.
Yeah. I've said for years, the way I've described the foundation belt, like this is the tagline I would have created: stiff where you need it, not where you don't.
Yeah.
Because that's it. It's pretty much exactly how I describe this. Is, I mean, it's stiff where you carry the gun, and it is not stiff where you typically don't. So
some irony to this is, even though the manufacturing process is such that there's not the reinforcement material in a section of the belt, it costs more to manufacture it that way than if you had the stiff reinforcement material all the way around.
Yeah.
It's sort of like taking the sugar out of stuff and making it sugar free somehow makes it more expensive for me to buy. So it's the same kind of thing here. Like, manufacturing this belt, because of what makes it special and unique, costs more to manufacture. Luckily, it's still very affordable. It's competitive, et cetera. There's probably just lower margins. But anyway, something to understand is that it is. There's a reason not every belt company has adopted this design technique, despite it being absolutely, unquestionably, undeniably more comfortable and better for you.
Yeah.
And that's because it's a pain in the neck to figure out and manufacture this way.
Yeah. We're getting close to the hour mark, and I thought I would just kind of summarize. I mean, this is a lot of the discussion we've had, and also where I'm at personally, opinion wise, on belts, and why, after 5-6+ years of using this belt. In fact, this one right here that we're holding, this is actually one I used for, I think, at least 3 years. And the whole reason it's not being used is because it's too big for me. I lost a couple inches off my waist, and so I needed to retire this one. But it really doesn't even show that much wear, except right here where my holster clipped on, and I'm using very aggressive DCC clips. It's just slightly frayed.
Yep.
But
Yep.
you wouldn't even really notice that if you were looking at me. If I was wearing this and you could see the belt, like, you probably wouldn't even really notice that. It held up exceedingly well over several years of use. Summing it up, it is all those things we've talked about. Like, what's important to me is that it's reinforced in the right ways, in the right places that support my carrying of the gun.
Yes.
Okay, it checks that box. Infinitely adjustable.
Yep.
I think we kind of almost glossed over that a little bit. I don't think we intended to necessarily, but for me, just let me hit that again. I find myself making use of the fact that I can adjust my belt day to day, and even with it, throughout the day.
Oh yeah.
Every time I go to the bathroom, like, there's just times where it's like, I'm going to do a little less tension or a little more tension, depending on the needs throughout the day. As you pointed out, sometimes you're like, I just need to make sure where I'm going, my next stop, whatever, I'm going out in public, I really want to make sure I'm concealed. I can tighten it just a little bit and add a little bit extra tuck into the body. It's nice to be in a lot of those adjustments are, like, I would describe as almost micro adjustments.
Minute.
It's amazing how much of a difference a small adjustment can make, both in terms of comfort as well as concealment. And so having that, like, infinite level of adjustment, to me, is really important. So it checks that box. And then finally, that it's comfortable. And this absolutely checks that box. I wear this belt with my pants, with my gun, every day, all day, typically 14+ hours, sometimes 16 hours. And you and I have crossed the country. In fact, I remember one drive in particular on the way back from a show, an expo. I don't remember if it was Iterate or what it was, but we were coming back from Pittsburgh. And you and I drove as far as we could in one go, and I think we made it as far as Hayes, Kansas.
Yeah, we slept on the
stopped and basically, put the seats back in the car and slept for a bit, and then continued, the next, 4 hours later or whatever, and got the rest of the way home. And I was carrying, and I did, I tallied it all up on that trip, but by the time, I got home, and still it went throughout the day carrying. But anyway, I had been carrying a gun in a holster using a foundation belt on my person for like 34 hours straight
Yeah.
before it came off of me. And that part of that was like 20 hours straight of driving,
Yeah.
and I never even thought of the gun the whole time.
Yeah.
So to make that's the point I want to make here. Some of that was made possible because of features like infinite adjustment, but it was hugely made possible because of how this belt is designed so that it's maximizing comfort while still accomplishing the job of supporting the gun properly.
Yeah, I don't think we can speak enough about the foundation belt. I don't think it's the best belt for every circumstance. Like I said, I don't use it depending on what I'm wearing, where it just doesn't kind of gel with the clothes I have on. But it is a fantastic belt, and it's very, very affordable and currently available in 2 colors, and maybe there'll be a 3rd color before you know it. But I think that the point is, look at what you're currently using. Is that the best option for you? Does it make sense to maybe add an additional belt for certain circumstances, or that would be more comfortable, or support your loadout to better? I think that that's a valid question to ask and to consider.
I really appreciate this comment from Henry on Facebook. He says that he's got his own setup currently. He mentioned specifically he has a bad lower back. And he says, but that belt is nice. I would definitely try it. He says that's a great comment. And I'll just say, if you have a bad lower back, the foundation belt is definitely an option. I think you should check out. I think you should give it a try.
Yeah.
So,
and our willingness to exchange, those if you get the wrong size or something, it drives our customer service guy bonkers. I mean, he complains to me all the time. He thinks that we should charge you people fees when you do exchanges, and I just keep saying nope. No fee. So we'll take care of you and make sure you get what you need if you order a belt from us. It's very important.
do follow. There's instructions on the product listing.
Yes, you should probably read those before you order, because that'll save us all a little pain.
Yep.
And money. But we'll happily do an exchange. We'll make you pay for shipping if we do an exchange, but we don't charge you a fee.
Yeah.
So that's something. And one other feature I'll just add is, as long as we're in this like shameless plug point of the podcast episode, is that something I think you need to understand about the foundation belt is that the Velcro is not necessary for the belt to stay in place.
Yeah.
Like the buckle keeps the belt in place. The Velcro is there just to have a place for the tail of the belt to be secured.
Yeah.
And it adds some security, I suppose, to the belt as well. But it's the buckle is all that is needed for the belt to stay where you want.
That's really, that's what a tri-glide buckle is all about. Is it's doubling back the material so that that is really what locks it in place. I think that is. I didn't actually have that looped through correctly a moment, the beginning part of the episode, but those of you that are watching, you can see that's really how that tri-glide buckle is supposed to be used. So, yep, that's good stuff.
I was at an event. I don't know which event it was. Anyway, it was in recent history, and I saw somebody wearing a foundation belt, and they did not do it properly. They fed it just kind of once around the outside. Mm-hmm. And I saw them, and I was like, hey, just so you know, that's not how that belt is designed to be worn. Mm-hmm. And he's like, I know. I like this better.
Yeah, no.
It's like, cool. But in your case, the Velcro is holding the belt up.
It works.
It'll work.
So, but anyway,
but yeah, I think that's the point, is to evaluate some of these things. And there's something, if you want to kind of get a list of belts that we have tested and vetted, if you're like, maybe I don't want the foundation belt. If you want a little hint, on the KSG Armory Holster website, we have a page called Belts, where we link to several different belts that we do not sell ourselves, but that we have tested and we feel good about those belts.
Yep. Yeah, that's a great point. And they're all quality belts, absolutely. Some are similar looking, at least, or somewhat similar in design to the foundation belt, and that's one of the reasons why you'll see that there's some similarities there for sure.
Yeah.
So, yep. We definitely, not intending for this to be a sales pitch only for the podcast today. That's kind of why I saved really, talking and focusing on the foundation belt to the end here. Wanted to make sure we talked about these different features, different things to look for in a belt.
Yeah.
Bring it to your awareness, because a lot of what we discussed today, I wasn't even aware of 15 years ago.
Yeah.
No,
I was clueless.
Would have made my life so much easier if I'd understood those things sooner, and if products like foundation belt existed sooner too. But I can't. I've tested a few other belts, and I do like a few others, but I just find myself continue to come back to the foundation belt for my own personal use. I know you do.
Yep.
Most of our team, I think, that's
Yeah.
what they're using, and a lot of professional shooters and instructor types out there using the foundation belt as well. So that's what I call a clue. People like it. It works. It's comfortable. It does what it's supposed to do.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. Get yourself some more support around that waistline.
Yep.
Support your loadout better.
Just quick shout out. Sponsors today, again, we're the EDC Belt Company Foundation Belt, which you can find at edcbeltco.com, or just go over to concealedcarry.com, navigate to our shop, and you can select by category belts, and you'll see all belts available for sale on concealedcarry.com. And you can choose from any of those. You'll see the foundation belts listed right there alongside all those as well. I think we sell fewer of the leather options now than we used
but we
to,
do have leather
but there
options.
are some.
Yeah, and one of which I use weekly, and I like just fine.
Yep.
But we have several. I think we have 3 or 4 different brands of belts on there. So
Yep.
yeah, that we've tested and vetted.
And we've got the wilderness tactical belts are on there
Yes.
for sure.
Yep.
You'll see several options for those. By the way, the link for those that wanted to check things out on the KSG Armory holsters that you mentioned a moment ago, ksgarmory.com/belts.
Well, that's not hard.
Yeah, that's pretty straightforward. So you can
Good
find
job, Jacob.
that resource there. So guys, thanks for your support of our sponsors. Thank you for support of the podcast and everything we do here at concealedcarry.com. Anything else?
Not for now. Thanks all.
We'll sign off and let you go with a reminder to train right, train often, and train safe so you can
fight hard, fight fast, and fight true. Take care.